Welcome to the Switchblade Sisters Social Club, a true crime podcast where two sisters exploit their worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. I'm Dee.
And I'm Rhonda, and together we are the Sake Sisters. For more information, check out our website at www.switchbladesisterssocialclub.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at Switchblade Sisters Social Club.
Thanks for listening. Hi, this is Switchblade Sisters Social Club, where two sisters exploit our worst fears for your entertainment. You're welcome. I am Dee, and here's my sister
I'm
Rhonda. And we've got our honorary Switchblade sister back.
Oh, we've got our friend of the show, Steve Keogh.
Hi.
Steve,
Thank
when
you
you
for having me
respond
back.
to the anytime, when you respond to the People's Pulse questions, it makes our day.
Oh, we love it. Do you know what? I actually had a message about that this morning from one of my oldest friends and a friend of the show as well. And she had a message for you. And I said, do you have any messages for Steve? She said, just that he's so lovely. And I love that he does the People's Pulse. So our listeners are big fans of yours. In our world, Steve, you are, as I've told you before, true crime top toddy. Your unofficial name in our circles is Hunky Steve.
Official name.
That
Maybe
doesn't
new
sit
merch
comfortable.
idea.
I've got to be honest. I've never gone through life being called Hunky. Chunky maybe, but not Hunky.
Well, sorry, you're just gonna have to get used to it. So we've got you back on the show because we had an episode. We had an interview with you quite a while ago when you released your new book at the time. About Jack the Ripper, Murder Investigation Team Jack the Ripper, which was amazing, where you applied modern investigative techniques on this incredibly old unsolved case that people are fascinated by. So I do recommend that book. It's so
Thank
good.
you.
And the original Murder Investigation Team was so interesting as well. Just actually, because you know, as true crime enthusiasts, you do sit there and watch a lot of detective shows and murder shows and think like, what the fuck are the police doing? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And sometimes they are fucking up, right? Sometimes they genuinely are. And other times it's because we're completely uninformed about what the process of a murder investigation actually is and have no right to actually comment. So it was really interesting to see like what you're actually meant to be doing as a police officer investigating a murder. So loved that book as well. And now you've got just a whole bunch of stuff that going on in your life that we want to talk to you about. First of all, you've got Secrets of a Murder Detective. Amazing.
Oh, I'm addicted to that show. It's just so
good.
You explain things literally in layman terms that people like us understand it, and you really give the intricate details of the whole process. And just fascinating.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's so when we set up to make it, the idea was everything I've done since I've left the police is all about murder. I mean, everything I do is about murder.
Your niche.
But in a way that shares knowledge. So the books, the TV show, the other projects that I'm working on that we'll talk about, it's all about sharing knowledge. And that's really important for me. So for me, it's not about look at my career, look what I've done. It's about this is what I've learned and I want to share it with you. And so I really appreciate when I hear things like that from people like you.
No, it comes across like that, and it's so
one
informative.
thing I learned, Steve, is if you're being attacked, scratch somebody.
Get
right?
that DNA.
Yes. So now I know.
Literally, exactly.
Valuable life lesson. Scratch somebody to get their DNA.
So I think your show is on a platform that you have to pay for, but so I asked you.
No, it's free.
Well, because I asked you, where can I watch
completely
this for free?
It's on Freeview, it's on Sky, it's on Virgin. Anywhere you watch TV, it will be on there. It used to be called CBS Reality, now it's called True Crime.
Yeah.
You don't.
Well, we'll put links in the show notes, anyways, where you can watch free stuff because
they've got the catch up Watch Free UK where you can watch it, but the episodes keep dropping off, so you can't binge watch it at the moment. Well, you can, but only the last 5.
And you did tell us just before we press record that it's going to be on ITVX next month. So that's Awesome. We'll make an
Yeah.
announcement about that because I need to watch the episodes that are no longer on Watch Free UK.
Oh, they
So
were tough episodes. They were really tough. There's only one that I skipped, and it was called, I think, A Mother's Grief. And I just,
Yeah.
I
That was
couldn't.
really sad, wasn't it?
Well, I didn't. That's the one I skipped just from the name because I thought
Right.
that's gonna hurt. But I watched all the other episodes, and I mean, they're all tough to watch. They were all tough, but it was really moving to see your reaction to, I think her name, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Cyan Blake.
Yeah, it's spelled Sean, but she used to call herself Cyan. So yeah.
Yeah, and it was really moving to see your reaction because, it shows that although you see this sort of thing day in, day out, it's still, it's still heartbreaking and affects you in a certain way.
But how could it not in that,
Mm,
like, I mean, what a tragic case.
mm,
The, the fact that Cyan was murdered was bad enough, but her two young boys, 5 and 7,
yeah.
Amon and Zachary, and then the way in which they were murdered, the brutal way in which they were murdered, and then just the way they were treated afterwards, buried in the garden, all in one grave. I mean, it's undoubtedly the hardest case of my career. And
Really?
so the process of that TV show is I sit down with, normally it's with an investigator on a crime that I haven't been involved in, but our first one was a case Richard and I we both dealt with it, and it was almost like reliving it. And as police officers, you don't really talk about your feelings, and when you talk about the job, it's more when you're with your colleagues, it's more in a factual way that you're talking about. And this was the first time either of us had really sat down and really, and we were almost, because we were talking through it chronologically, we were almost back there, and we were back in that room when we got the phone call, and that's what set me off. And it was
Mm.
that phone call because, for those that haven't seen it, basically, Cyan and the boys went missing, and
she
the
was the one that
husband.
had been in EastEnders.
That's it. Yeah,
So it
that's the
had
one.
received possibly more media attention at the time that it might have otherwise.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and they were missing, and as a team, we always clinged on to the hope that the children would still be alive because of the blood that was in the kitchen and obvious signs of trauma and some sort of violent attack. Somebody had died. That was obvious, and you were just clinging on to that hope that it was just Cyan, and that as a father, he wouldn't have done that to the boys, and he'd put them somewhere. So we were visiting all his family and trying to see if we could find them. But when that phone call came through that all three were in the grave, it was just so deflating, and yeah, so it sort of took the wind out of ourselves. And I think for most of us, that was the low point of our career.
Yeah, I can't imagine how you find that balance of compartmentalizing and desensitizing yourself enough so that you can do the job without completely breaking,
Yeah, you got to,
but
and
still
you do
maintaining your humanity.
compartmentalize is exactly what you do. You lock it away. You don't think about it. Um, whether that's healthy or not, I don't know. I mean, it can come back and bite you, can't it? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just what you do. You get on with it, and if your whole focus is. It always sounds corny when I say this, but it's true. Your whole focus is getting justice for the victim and the families, and you can't do that if
That's
you're only
not
if you.
corny, that's beautiful, Steve. That's what we want to hear.
Yeah, but that's what motivates you, and you couldn't do that if you were caught up in your own feelings and your own emotions and your fears, and you weren't doing your job properly. You're no good to them then, are you? So
No, but
you
you
have to be
managed
able
to
to.
do, from what I've seen, you managed to do that to compartmentalize and just, keep calm and carry on and have that attitude, but without losing your humanity when dealing with the cases, with the victims, with the families. And I think that's the difficult balance that I'm always just in awe of you,
Mm.
because you've not shut off your feelings so much that you don't have that anymore, which I think it must happen, right? That you just turn into a
Yeah,
robot in
well,
order to not think about what you're actually dealing with.
yeah, no, you're 100% right. So I can't remember if I talked about this before, but during the 7/7 bombings in 2005, I dealt with one of the bomb scenes and spent 2 weeks there picking up the remains of everything that happened in that train. And so afterwards, my family a lot of them were concerned, asking me if I was okay. And the biggest thing that worried me was how okay I was.
Mm.
And it made me start to think, have I lost some part of my humanity there? But sort of when you reflect on it, you're like, well, no, I have to do that. I'm doing a job. I have to act like that. But in a weird way, it's comforting when you do get affected, because it makes you realize, actually, no, I'm not a complete psychopath. I still have empathy. And for me, it was always about children. When I dealt with murders of children, that would be the thing that would make me realize, actually, yeah, I've still got that human side. Because you do worry, because you can think to yourself, God, have I changed that much? Am I? But you like you say, you still cling on to that.
Because one thing I've always wondered is what does it look like when you go home after a day like that? When you go home, can you just sit down and have dinner with the family, put the TV on and relax?
Watch EastEnders.
Yeah, what do you do after a day's work like that?
This is normally at the beginning of a murder inquiry, when it's just come in and you're trying to find out who the killers were. You basically don't switch off. So even you'll be sitting there having dinner with your family, but in your mind you're still working over, where are we going, what are we missing, what can we do. You get to bed, you're laying there, and I used to do some of my best detective work in bed, because your clarity of thought is at its clearest, and
when the world's quiet, right?
The world's quiet, you're not distracted by anything else, and you can really concentrate. And I always found that I would come up with, we haven't thought of this, we should do that, and go in the next morning, and it'll be like, right, I've got this idea, let's do this kind of thing. But yeah, you don't switch off. You can't. It's not one of those jobs where you leave the office, punch out, and you're gone. It stays with you.
But are you able to have some semblance of a normal life when you get home and do your normal things?
You do, but it's still there. So you've got your kids, and you try not to. But you're still a father. You still need to be, or a parent. You still need to be that for your children. So I don't know. I suppose it's the same with any of us, and anybody that's listening to this. When you've got something preying on your mind, you still get on with life, don't you? But you're aware of it. If you've got some pressures at work, or pressure in a relationship, financial worries, whatever it is, if you've got something that's really important to you at that moment in time, it will always be there, but you just get on with it. And that's what it's like for us when we're investigating murder. It's always there, and you're playing with your kids, and you might get this quiet time where you're still thinking about it. What can we do? And it's always, for me, it's always about, what are we missing? What could we do that's going to get the evidence we need to identify the killer, convict the killer? Because it's not always obvious. So there's no book that you can open that says, right, here's a murder, let's open the book and we'll investigate it, and we'll tick this off as we go. Because
there's your book. You wrote that book.
But every single murder is different. Every single murder. So I went on a course. It's called PIP 3. So when you join the police, you become PIP 1. It's professionalism in, I can't remember what it stands for. Professionalizing in investigation procedures or something like that. So every police officer is PIP 1 when they start in uniform. You become a detective, you become PIP 2. And in PIP 3, your SIOs, who are lead murder investigations. You go on that course. And for me, I'd done murder for about 8 years when I went on to it. It was like, well, it's like murder for beginners, because all they can do is give you the basics. But when you go investigate your murders, every single one is different, and you're always learning. There's always something, there's always a nuance to every single murder investigation. And the biggest learning I ever did was in court. So yeah, you'd have your investigation, you get to court, and you'd be like, oh, when the defense are picking your case apart, I wish I'd done that, or actually that worked really well, I remember that for next time. So court is the best learning ground for being a detective, because ultimately that's what you're doing when you're investigating a murder, is to convict the killer. So it's whatever you're doing in a murder investigation, you've always got your mind on court, on how will this look, how will this play out, what will the defense make of this? And you really do learn that more so when you've sat in court and you've seen it go wrong, and you've seen what you need to do in order to get a conviction.
And one thing you said on the show, and I thought it was such a good phrase, was, in order to find out how somebody was killed, you have to find out how they lived.
Yeah, so to understand how somebody died, you have to understand how they lived. That's because the vast majority of murders, there is something or someone within a person's life which is the reason why they died. It could be that they have a relationship with a violent individual, they owe money to someone, they have a drug habit. But there's something in someone's life that if you find it, it will give you the motive and show you the killer, why it
Because
happened.
complete stranger murders are very rare, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So I think I always get a bit, I don't know if you would have seen my figures. I always get a bit statty around February. The government released figures to do with homicide, and I find them fascinating. And I think the last figures for a female murder victim, it was 8%. When the suspects were identified, it was 8% were strangers. So it puts it in perspective. About 50% were partners, ex-partners. So most murders, there is a link between the victim's life and the reason they died. Now, I'm not saying it's their fault, and it's not like victim blaming. I'm just saying there's something within their life, someone within their life, that if you find it, it'll uncover why the murder happened. So, and a huge part of that is like the family liaison officers going into the families and getting information from the family about trying to build up a picture of the person's life. So it sometimes gets called victimology. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I was so interested in that. And also, interestingly, two of the cases happened just 5 minutes down the road from me in Fulham. I think the first episode, was his name Tom?
Tom Cressman.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Sinead Healy.
Sinead Healy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had quite a wide range of different cases. There's some really sad ones coming up. Like there's one where a mother kills her child, a nanny that was murdered by the people that looked after that she was looking after the children for. I mean, some really, really sad cases.
Yeah, actually, that was one of my questions. How did you pick those cases? How did you pick those cases?
So you kind of work backwards because the way the program came about is I was talking at CrimeCon in Glasgow and got approached by the lady who's in charge of scheduling for, as it was, CBS Reality, now True Crime. And it was when she heard me describing my first book, and she came up to me and said, that sounds like it could translate to a TV show. Why don't we sit down, have a coffee or something, talk about it? So we ended up in a situation where we were going to make a program, and we didn't know what the program was going to be. All we knew was we were going to commission that True Crime.
All you knew was that you were born for television.
I think I was born for radio, but I ended up on television. But so we ended up with TV production companies pitching ideas to us. So we're going to make a program. What are your ideas? So it was a bit backwards to how it normally happens. So we didn't really know the format it was going to take, and it was sort of a brainstorming. And when I talked about that, sitting down with a detective and really asking them the questions that they wouldn't normally get asked by a TV production companies, that was what we really thought would be the sort of central to the program. But in order to do that, you would need SIOs who were willing to come in, sit down and have that conversation. So we kind of worked backwards. So we identified the detectives that would be willing to come in, and then we looked through their cases and to see which would be sort of most appropriate for the format of the TV show.
Yeah, I love the format, and you interviewing them was great because you know exactly the right type of questions, the profound and significant questions to ask them.
See, funny enough, all of the detectives said they much preferred that format to the normal one where you sat. So we actually do both. So they will be talking to a producer who's sort of behind the camera asking the questions, and that's the normal format. So I've done that a few times on different programs, and that's the normal format. But essentially, what they're trying to do is ask you the questions so you can tell the story that they want you to tell. Whereas our format, where I'm sitting down with them, is I'm talking about their investigation and understanding what they're doing and understanding why they're doing it, but trying to ask the questions in a way that it would be quite boring if it was just us talking in job speak and me assuming that I know what they're talking about. They're assuming. So what I try and do is get them to explain things in layman's terms, so that anybody eavesdropping understands. And that was the challenge really with those interviews.
It's funny that you say about eavesdropping, because I love those bits where you're basically sitting opposite each other on a table talking about a case, because it just really feels like I've just gone down to the pub with you and one of your retired detective mates, and I'm just like asking you all kinds of questions about these fascinating cases. And
Do you
so
know what?
I
I'm so
love
happy to hear
that.
you say that, because in my mind, that's what it was. So
Right. Well, that's how it comes across.
yeah,
And it's fantastic. And again, the fact that you managed to explain it in layman's terms, because we do have to keep on reminding everyone, believe it or not, we have no qualifications in this field whatsoever. So the fact that like we can follow and we understand
And it feels
um
intimate. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels like you're involved in the conversation, you know?
yeah, which
oh,
also
no,
I
I'm really
think
pleased to hear you say that.
it also translates into like a lot of respect, like I said, for the victim and the
Mm.
victim's family and everything. So it just comes across. It's amazing. It's really, really amazing. And we love it. We can't wait to watch more. So and then have you on time and time again to discuss
So are there more episodes
even
coming
more.
out?
We've made 20, yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. Oh my
I can't
God.
even think where we are. Are we 7 or 8 or something like that? So yeah,
Oh
so there's
yeah,
at least
yeah.
12 to come.
Oh, that's
Mm.
amazing. Because at first when I watched it, I saw 3 episodes were on there. So I thought it was like a mini series. And then when I went back on last week, I was like, wow, there's more episodes. So this
Yeah,
is
it goes
great
on until
news.
July.
Oh, that's great
Oh,
news.
You'll be
That's
sick
that's
great
of it
news.
by then.
Because
no,
we
that
have
I was just thinking that's my next couple of months sorted. So
yeah, because
fine.
we have a void in our life after Married at First Sight and Baby Reindeer is over. So we're glad that you're gonna fill that void for us for the next few months.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be easier once it's on ITVX as well, because I'm assuming it will be available there where you can just watch, you can binge watch it. Whereas I don't know why they drop off on the other one.
Oh, well, that is just the perfection. I like when I have a really good show in mind
Mm.
to just literally set aside a day. Again, no children, where I just have all my snacks ready and I'm in my pajamas and I know there's going to be no interruptions and I can just binge. So this is the plan for your show. I've already obviously watched a few of the episodes that came out, and
Cool.
but yeah, that's how the rest of this show will play out for me in my life, if you're
So,
interested.
Steve, are people surprised when they meet you? Like, do they have preconceived ideas of what a detective is going to be like?
I, I mean, that's difficult for me to say, because I don't, obviously it's in their mind, but
Mm.
what I get told quite often is I feel really awkward saying this. I hate
Go
talking
for
about
it.
myself in this way, but like people say, oh, you're down to earth. So and it's something that a lot of people say, you're down to earth. So if people are saying that, they must assume like I'm going to be stuck up or something. I don't know. But I suppose it comes down to, when do you actually get to hear from a detective?
Mm.
You don't really, do you? You see them on these documentaries and they're all very serious because they're in work mode. Um, and it's only, I suppose it's quite a modern thing. Like maybe I do this, Colin does it, David Swindle. I can't think of many other detectives
Steve
that,
Gaskin, we have to chuck him in
Steve
there because
Gasket.
he's
Yeah, so
amazing.
I can't think of many detectives where you get to actually
Have
see them
access.
open up and
Yeah.
be honest and
Mhm.
talk about their work, their life, etc.
Because unless you know people personally or they're in your family who do this line of work, it's just a complete mystery what happens in this
Yeah,
world.
and presumably that you need to be retired to be able to be fully open about your
100%. And
experiences
that's
and
why we
so
have
forth.
retired detectives on the TV show, because that the handcuffs are off, if you like. They can talk
Mm.
about it. Not, and they wouldn't say anything that would be, when you're doing this, you're always mindful of the family. So for instance, Cyan's family, we approached them and we offered them the chance to be on, and I completely understand that it wasn't for them. But there were a few things that they said, like we want to make sure that this isn't mentioned, and we wouldn't have done anyway.
Yeah.
But you're always mindful that the family may be watching, and so you want to be respectful, and you wouldn't say anything that would suddenly take them by surprise. Do you know what I mean? Or they didn't know.
And
Yeah.
what if the family didn't want the case to be covered on a
Wouldn't do
TV
it.
show?
Wouldn't do it.
Because
Absolutely wouldn't do it.
we had an amazing conversation with Dr. Honor Townsend about this, because she obviously also has a bunch of shows where she talks about this, and she actually has the families on as well quite often. And it was really interesting because she was talking about why a family would want to have the case sort of dragged up again and brought on a show. And obviously it's to raise awareness about sort of specific dangers, you know, from your partners or
Mm.
certain activities or whatever, to remember their loved one. But I can imagine that there's also some people who are like, no, I just don't want to, I can't go through it again.
Yeah, and you just wouldn't. And bear in mind, with the detectives we're talking to are all, they've all got years investigating murder, so
there's
pick
enough
another
cases to
case.
choose from.
Yeah, exactly.
Sadly.
So you just wouldn't go there. You wouldn't put anything on TV that could be upsetting for a family. You wouldn't do it. Actually, Honor's on Secrets. She, I think only one episode, but she, at one point you'll see her. She'll appear.
Oh, oh, that's
Well,
amazing. Two
she's,
powerhouses on one show.
yeah, two fabulous legends. I think going back to, you know, the preconceived ideas of murder detectives, I think one of the things is that you're just so nice. I can't, like, and yet you have to deal with these murderers in your career, like literal murderers, and you're so adorable. So are you
But
different when you're in a
well,
room with like,
you do. I mean, yeah, so one of the things I'm actually proud of is that I spent 30 years in the police, and I never had. I think I had two complaints, neither of them substantiated, and I arrested hundreds and hundreds of people for every single crime you could think of. Some of the worst people in society, most violent people in society. But every person I dealt with them with respect. All right, you might have murdered somebody, but it's not my job to judge you. It's not my job to punish you. It's my job to professionally deal with you, to get the information from you, etc., etc. And I always found that if you treat people well, you treat people with respect. And in my career, I got assaulted once, and that had nothing to do. That was in uniform, where someone who a police officer was with a big mouth wound a load of people up, and we got attacked. I never got assaulted. So yes, you're doing a job that's difficult. Yes, you're dealing with some people that aren't particularly nice, but you just treat them with respect. And that one, they're not going to complain against you. Two, they're not going to hurt you, which is probably more important. And
nice.
three, everything just works better because it's not a battle with them. They'll cooperate with you. So yeah, I mean,
And
not.
presumably
Sometimes you have to be a bit strong with them, and you have, like, sometimes did we have I can't remember what we talked about last time. One of my interview techniques was to be their friend until I wasn't, and it's like good cop bad cop, but I was good cop then bad cop, and I found that really effective.
It's my dating style too.
Sorry, say again.
It's my dating style too.
So when you're
single.
interviewing someone, there's a set procedure that you follow. So and funny enough, I used that same procedure on the interviews I did with the detectives. So essentially what you do is, when you're interviewing either a witness or a suspect, the first thing you do is you say to them, tell me everything. And they will just dump. They will just tell you everything they want to tell you. And then you say, right, thank you for that. And then you'll break it down into bits and you'll go into more detail, which is exactly what I did with the detectives on Secrets. But when you're interviewing a suspect, there will become a point, it's called the challenge phase. And it's where you bring in their lies, the evidence, put the pressure on them. And it's at that point where I'd switch from being their friend to not. And I found it really effective because it knocks them out of their comfort zone, because suddenly this person who's been really nice to you all this time, their voice has changed. They're leaning in. They're do you know what I mean? They're like, I don't like this. Why are you being like this to me? And then you're bringing in all the evidence and everything, and you're putting that pressure on them, and they're like, all right, I did it. You know what I mean? Not always, but
I can imagine how unsettling it would be to think that Steve was your pal and then suddenly Steve's not your pal anymore. That would be heartbreaking.
It would break my heart.
Exactly. I was interviewing this terrorist for we had him for 14 days, and some really horrendous plots they had planned. And the solicitor one day came to me, because what we would do is we had them for 14 days, but you wouldn't interview them every single day. Some days you'd leave them in the cell. You didn't have much to put to them, so you'd leave them for a day and then you come back the next day. And the solicitor said to me, on the days you don't interview him, he misses you.
Oh,
I was like, oh.
I believe it. I believe it.
I was about to say that's so sweet, but I didn't know if that's the appropriate response.
I mean, it says a lot about you.
That's going to make me laugh for a long time, Steve.
So, yeah, so I mean, it's nice, and then I made him
Did he-
cry at the end when I did literally made him cry. So he wouldn't talk because terrorists don't talk to you; they won't even answer their name. But he did cry when I started being horrible.
Did he
not
ask if
horrible
you
to him,
guys could keep in touch and still be friends? Oh,
I don't even know how to respond to it because it
I
makes me
know.
laugh, but it's also so sweet. But I don't know if that's inappropriate to say that about a terrorist.
well, so one of the things that is a genuine recurring nightmare for me, maybe because of what we do, but it was brought to the fore recently. I had my own true crime incident, Steve. Let me tell you about this. It was minor. It was minor. It's like kind of like a Prosecco problem. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, a couple of weeks ago, I had 2 police officers come to the door. So obviously, before I even answered the door, I was like, someone in my family's dead. No, it can't just be one person, or someone else in my family would tell me, so my whole family must be dead. You know how your mind goes, right?
Yeah.
I did answer
Or
the door.
I'd be thinking it
baseball.
wasn't me. That'd be my
Well, yeah, no, then I was like, am I in trouble? Did I accidentally do something
I
really
permanently
bad?
have that song by Shaggy in my head. It wasn't me.
And also your Skilo song, huh? I wish I was a little bit taller. Then the policeman starts talking about where I've parked my car, and I was like, have you come to my door at 2 in the morning because I've parked my car funny? Because I'd actually had to park on a road that was permit only because there was no parking space. But you know, I was going to move it before the permit thing kicked in. Anyways, what happened was a drunk driver had hit my car, my parked car, luckily, but ping-ponged off my car into the car on the other side of the road as well. So like on a 20-mile-an-hour road. So it's like, yeah, I don't know how
that's
fast he was
annoying,
actually
isn't it?
going. Yeah, really fucking annoying. Once I realized, okay, no one's died, I was actually relieved that it was just that. But yeah, kind of annoying. But I did have that moment, as my sister said, when there was police at my door at 2 o'clock, that I was like, I'm being arrested for something. What did I do? And it's
What did I
'cause it's
forget I did?
yeah, it's a recurring nightmare for me. Again, we're Palestinian, and you know how there's like a lot of different conditions for people being arrested as suspected terrorists, like they could be kept longer and so forth.
I used to get
So
nervous when my dad, do you remember when 24 came out?
yeah,
That series 24 about the counterterrorism unit with Jack Bauer, Kiefer Sutherland. I used to get nervous when my dad be talking in Arabic on the phone, and he was telling his brother about the series that was really good, and then he'd say the word terrorist in English, but the rest of the conversation be in Arabic.
and he likes to stand in the garden and talk really loud, and then, or he'll be talking about the political situation. So he's talking in Arabic really loud, and the only words that English speakers can hear are Hamas and, you know, Gaza and stuff like that. So yeah, we just have an innate phobia of being arrested, I think. So what advice do you have for someone who gets wrongfully arrested?
Just be honest and speak and talk to the officers. Yeah. What solicitors sometimes do is they've got no imagination. So even if you say, like, I didn't do it, they'll say no comment. Now, you would like to think if you hadn't committed a crime that you wouldn't end up getting charged because the evidence shouldn't be there, but you never quite know. You never know. You never know.
Well, let's go back a bit. So you recommend getting a solicitor?
Always get a solicitor.
Uh-huh.
But maybe not necessarily listen to their advice if they say no comment. Say, look, I haven't done it. I want to talk to them. I want to tell the police this is where I was at this time. This is why it wasn't me. If there is a chance you may have got in trouble, then maybe do listen to the solicitor. But if you've got nothing to do with it at all and it's a complete mistake, then just be honest.
That was my next question. And what if you did commit the crime? But what about things like, you know, you always hear mixed reviews and advice on things like lie detector tests, you know?
Well, lie detector tests aren't 100% accurate. So how can you rely on something that isn't 100% accurate? It doesn't make sense to me. So we don't use them in this country, certainly not in our legal system, and I wouldn't want to.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Because sometimes I worry that if you say no to certain things, it comes across like you're guilty, but really it's just because you listen to too many true crime podcasts that tell you that these things are not accurate.
Or you're
and
like
so
us where we have anxiety and would ask us any question.
yeah, like
Do
I've
you know
been
what,
pinging all
everything
over
you're
the
saying
place.
though? So I've got quite strong opinions on when it comes to these people that are on telly and they reckon that they can tell someone's lying by watching an interview with someone famous and they're pointing out where they're lying. It's a load of rubbish. What they're doing is they're pointing out stress signs, and you can be stressed through lying, but you can also be stressed by asking a question that makes you feel uncomfortable, knowing that someone's going to be examining the answer.
Yeah,
And
or being arrested when you don't have very much experience being arrested.
Exactly. Well, no, that you're 100% right, Dee, because I was always conscious of this. So certainly when I was in uniform and I'd stop a car and I'm talking to the driver, I wouldn't let them go until I was satisfied that they were telling the truth. I knew who they were and they hadn't committed any crimes. So you'd be looking for signs. If you ask someone their name, you'll be looking for signs. Were they comfortable saying that? And actually, one of my tricks back in the day was always to ask them the star sign, because everybody knows the star sign, but if they're pretending to be somebody else, they go, like,
That's a good trick.
And straight away, if someone doesn't know the star sign, you know they're lying. But you also have to be conscious that you're a police officer in uniform, and that makes people nervous when you stop someone driving. So they may look nervous, but that doesn't mean they're lying. And it's like when you get people going on television and they're being interviewed, someone famous might be being interviewed by, I don't know, Piers Morgan or something, and they're looking for Prince Harry and Meghan, for instance, and they're looking for signs that they're lying. And they go, oh, well, look, I mean, you can see they're on national television being grilled about subjects that they know are going to have people doing this exact same thing on. Of course they're going to be nervous, and when you're nervous you get signs of stress, and they're exactly the same signs of stress as when you're lying. So for me, yes, look for the signs of stress, but that's only the beginning. Then you have to explore that with them, and that's what you do as a police officer. You wouldn't say to somebody, oh look, clearly you're lying, and then walk away, write it up that you're lying. You'd have to explore it with them and go into the details and try and tear their story apart. And there's techniques that you use to try and catch them out. But just by looking at someone and saying they're lying is a load of rubbish.
I mean, that makes so much sense, because most of us are fucking scared and get anxious when you've got a police car sitting next to you in traffic. Even when you know you're doing nothing wrong, you're like suddenly thinking, I've forgotten how to drive. I'm clearly going to do an illegal maneuver just because this police car sat next to me. And
yeah, like this is a really shit comparison. But when I was teaching, you got observed regularly, and you always teach 10 times worse when you're being observed because you're so fucking nervous that you're not your natural self. And yeah, it's just an unnatural situation. But I think Dee deleted a question that I really wanted to ask you. But I'm so intrigued about when you go into any situation or you meet any new people, you must see things and see the world and see human behavior very differently, see all the nuances and the little details that the rest of us just don't see.
I would like to think I'm a good judge of character. I'm not often wrong. My first impressions of people, generally, if there's something off about them, I'll pick up on it. And it might not be, it might be at the subconscious level. You might not be able to explain it. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something not quite right about that person. Yeah, definitely. I've definitely got that from spending 30 years of doubting everything that anyone ever said to me. I mean, as a police officer, your first point really is you have to assume someone's lying to you until you can prove they're telling the truth, or they can prove you're telling the truth. Which, yeah, it's not the healthiest thing in your social life. But
and what about when you walk into a situation? Are you looking for, even if it's not a crime scene, are you looking for suspicious things, or do you naturally see them?
You naturally see what I naturally see is wrong-uns. You can spot them a mile off, and there's just something, just the way they walk. Whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you know how people should act within a particular situation. Even if it's just walking down the street, it's being in a shop, being in a pub. You know what's natural and you know what's not, and that's what you pick up on. You pick up on something that doesn't look quite right. That's not what I'm expecting, and then you focus in on them, and then you notice more. So I think it starts subconsciously, but then once your radar's on them, then you can pick up on the other bits.
Okay, I was really interested in that, just because I bet you just see the world and just see the details that the rest of us aren't aware of.
Yeah, so it'd be like just going around the supermarket. You just sort of hone in on them because it's just not acting quite right, and it stands out to you. And as soon as it could be just a split second of something, and then you focus in, and then you realise, oh, actually, look, they're shoplifting, and you do kind of pick up on that. Yeah.
Are you tempted to go up to them and be like, whatever you're thinking, don't do it?
If it's my local, I don't want to get involved because the last thing I want to do is get known locally as that ex-copper that tries to arrest the shoplifters. Yeah, I'll just walk away.
So Steve, I always imagine that like police officers, when when you hear about these criminals making like just stupid mistakes that lead to them being caught, which is obviously great for society, but do you ever think like, oh, what a fucking idiot? And like, but what I'm trying to ask you, have you ever tried to plan the perfect murder from everything that you've learned?
Do you know, funny enough, we've not mentioned this yet, but I've got a podcast coming out, and it's called Murder Investigation for Crime Writers. And it's basically me sharing knowledge of murder investigation to help crime writers with the authenticity of their writing. And I've got an online course and community and everything. It's all sort of all together. And my second episode is 10 mistakes killers make to get them caught. And it's things I've seen where it's not the obvious thing, like you've left a fingerprint at the crime scene, but things I've seen that killers do that later on you catch them out by doing it. So yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, can you tell us
I'm conscious of when I'm doing it is I'm hoping that killers aren't listening in and saying,
"Oh, right, yeah,
they're not our demographic." We don't think.
Yeah.
So no, sorry. In answer to your question, no, I've never tried to plan the perfect murder. No one's ever upset me that much.
So,
not yet, anyway.
Steve, you have.
Well, it would have to be a stranger murder. I think would increase your chances of getting away with it. Maybe. Are you?
Why would you plan a stranger murder?
Because you want to plan the perfect murder? Because we're living in a Hitchcock film in this scenario? I don't know.
Just to carry out the murder, like a serial killer.
I did not. No one said anything about carrying it out. Talking about planning, hypothetically.
All right, planning.
Yeah.
Do you know what? In all honesty, if I'm planning anything in my head, it's for the zombie apocalypse. I've got this thing. I've got this thing. Like I drive my partner mad. We'll be somewhere, and I go, "Well, this is a great place to defend for the zombie apocalypse." So, yeah, my mind
Share
is
this with us.
Seriously. My mind is. I will often be thinking about that in a weird way. Does that make me sound weird?
No, because I've been recently debating getting a bunker, so it does not sound weird.
Did you watch Fallout? Have you seen that?
No, I can't because of my anxiety.
Right, okay.
So, Steve, what do we need to do?
Murder shows, fine. Anything to do with any kind of apocalypse.
Anywhere without windows. Like, I don't like to go underground.
But windows are very hard to defend against zombies because, they break, for one, don't they?
Yeah.
So maybe if you have bars, you might need some bars.
Definitely my plan was an enamel bathtub. Just flip it over, hide under that.
That wouldn't for zombies or
for like a nuclear attack.
Oh, a nuclear attack, yeah. Do you know
I don't want to survive it either? Because what world are you going to live in after that? You know.
Well, when I was at Hendon many moons ago, 30 plus years ago now, we used to have a lesson called civil defence, and it was about what you would do, what your duties were in a nuclear war. It's like it felt like the most pointless lesson I'd ever done in my life, because the chances are we live in London, we're probably going to be dead. we're going to be vaporized. But just in case, it's a crazy thing, isn't it? That wasn't that long ago that we were living under this cloud of that nuclear war could happen at any time. I think
but like you say, we still think
don't know
it
they're
could.
born, do they?
Yeah, we still think it could. We just know that we have no chance, so no point stressing about it. But on a lighter note, let's go back to talking about your podcast.
Yeah, Steve, we want to know about your future plans, because you have been busy since leaving the police force, since leaving Scotland Yard.
Tell us about the course. Tell us about the podcast.
Yeah, so what I'm doing at the moment is, as I say, I'm trying to share my knowledge around murder investigation for the benefit of crime writers, so that where do crime writers really go in order for them to hone in their authenticity on their writing?
So you're talking specifically fiction crime, right?
Fiction crime. Oh, I could be true crime writers, but anybody that needs for their writing to understand how murders are investigated, how we actually do it. There aren't that many resources. Obviously, my first book, which I think is a good resource for writers. There isn't a podcast specifically for this. There aren't online courses specifically for this. So it's either because there isn't a market for it or someone hasn't thought of it yet. So I'm hoping it's just that somebody hasn't thought of it yet.
Is this off the back of you reading books and being like, it would never happen like that? that you
I
were like,
can't
I need to.
watch. Yeah, I can't. It's not so much books. I'm not a big reader, but when it comes to watching TV, I can't watch murder dramas because they get it wrong all the time. And when you're sitting there, you're thinking, well, that wouldn't happen, which makes it doesn't lend itself to an enjoyable
Do you
watch.
know, I tried to start watching Silent Witness, because it obviously focuses a lot on the forensics and that side fascinates me and everything. And I started right from the beginning. I had to stop before the end of season 1 because that woman, the pathologist, interfered so much in the investigations to the point where she was directly responsible for at least 3 of the murders because of her interfering. I just couldn't watch it, so I can't imagine what it's like for
Yeah,
you.
I mean, I've not seen that, but a pathologist's role is very, very defined within a murder investigation, and it relates to the post-mortem. That's it. So yeah,
Yeah, so I presume they can't go and like tell murderers that they have been found out and
no.
so forth, and or tell people that, you know, oh, your loved one was murdered by this person, and that's
They
literally what
won't meet the
happens in that show.
families. I mean, there's a reason why. Actually, no, that's unfair. Actually, I was going to say there's a reason why they're pathologists, but one of the nicest men in the world is Richard Shepherd, who's a pathologist. So I think he would have been very good with families, but a lot of them probably wouldn't be.
So,
Yeah.
Steve, if we have any crime writers in our audience, we definitely have crime enthusiasts. How can they sign on to your course, and do they get access to you? How is your course structured?
So my course is essentially broken down into different parts. So it's an online community with courses, and the online community is you can just sign up for, I think it's £15 a month, and you get access to the online community, which would be forums, asking you questions about murder investigation will go on, live Q&As with me, live Q&As with specialists within murder investigation, so pathologists, forensic scientists, etc. Pay a little bit more each month and you can have access to the courses, or the courses you can buy as standalone things. So I'm trying to make it accessible for everybody. So it's not like they're not being put off by a huge fee, but the information they get, I think, is unique, and they will have access to me, have access to other experts around murder investigation, so that it will help them with their storytelling. And in conjunction with that is the podcast, which obviously is completely free and open to everybody. And if you just want to listen to the podcast, that's great. But what I'm trying to do is create a community where crime writers can come together and have access to people that can be there on hand to help them with their storylines, and not have to pay through the nose to get advice, which it can be quite expensive. And crime writers, there's not a lot of money in writing books. I've written 2, I know. There's not a lot of money in writing books, so they're not going to have a lot of spare income. So you could just go on to the forum, spend £15, spend a month there, have all your questions answered, and then use that for your writing. And that's
You know, I personally think that's incredible value, that they pay £15 a month and actually have access to you.
yeah.
Because I'm in 2 memberships, work-related ones, and they are more than that. And
I mean, that's the price of a single book, basically.
but to
Yeah.
have one,
You
to,
know.
you know, to have access to you in Q&As, and just a community where you can go and ask questions and bounce ideas off of people. It's
Other
an
people in the
amazing,
same position. Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing support. And, you know, CPD for a lot of writers, you know, professional development and information. They're not, as you said, it's a one of a kind course. They're not going to get that access to that sort of information firsthand as well from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anywhere else. So that's so for me now. The first lot of courses are there, the community's there, the podcast is coming out. So now it's about getting people to know that resource is there. So that's my next challenge, the marketing.
And Steve, you've
well,
got
we
a free
have-
course as well, don't you? You've got the free course that people can
Yeah.
do as a taster.
Yeah,
for the
so
event.
the free course is there, so you get an idea of, is this for me? But again, if you were to sign up to, so the online membership, I've put it as rank, so you can be detective constable, you get access to me, the forums, detective sergeant, you get access to the actual courses, and there's scope there to do some more things later on. But like I say, I want to make it accessible to everybody, and not make it so that just because you're a successful author, you have access to expert advice. I want to make it so every writer, no matter what stage you're at, even if you're just thinking about starting, you've got access to people that can help you with your authenticity.
Well, we are going to put links to everything that we talked about with regards to you in our show notes. So everyone have a little look at the books and the course and the podcast. When's the podcast starting? Do you know when it's coming out?
I'm planning at the moment Tuesday week. So what's that? I can't even work that out. Tuesday 17th or something, or is it? No.
So either the Tuesday before or the Tuesday after this episode comes out. I was trying to do podcast chronology.
So it's either the 14th or the 21st.
It'll be the 21st, yeah.
21st.
Okay,
21st.
so basically a week after this episode comes out, you'll be able to fill your boots with some Stephen Keogh podcast episodes. Are you?
I'm releasing 3, I think, to start off with. So there'll be 3 there. It's What's It Like to Be a Murder Detective, the 10 mistakes that killers can make to get themselves caught, and what detectives do when they arrive at a scene of a murder. So they're the first 3 episodes. Everything I do is on my website, stevekeogh.com, so you can get it through there. But what I'm really keen to do is, if people have got any questions of any topics that they would like me to cover, then I'll do that, because everything that I'm doing is for the writers. So whatever they need, I'll provide.
So should they DM you?
Yeah, DM me on Instagram. Yeah, email. Come into the ideal place is to come onto the community and in the forums and ask questions there.
Okay, so that's how they can access you. And if any of our listeners are not following Steve, which I would be surprised if there's anyone not following Steve already, we will put Steve's Instagram handle in the show notes, but it's Stephen with a V _Keogh _. And you've already mentioned your website.
Yeah, website's got everything on stevekeogh.com.
Oh, Steve, have you got any other plans in the pipeline, short term, medium term, that we haven't talked about?
No, that's kept me busy for the moment. I'm supposed to be retired from the police, but I feel like I'm busier now than
I can imagine. Launching a course is no joke, and creating all those your course materials, launching a podcast, each one of those things is
membership group, basically. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. No wonder your partner is annoyed with you not spending enough time with her.
I'm just so impressed where you got these skills, Steve. Where did you learn all these tech skills? Was this post leaving the force?
YouTube. There's not a lot you can't find on YouTube online. You know what I mean? So
but I listened to the trailer last night for your podcast, and you just have the most, and I saw somebody commented as well on one of your Instagram posts that you just have the most soothing, great voice to listen to. Yeah,
buttery voice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You can use that quote.
I think I'm more suited for radio than I am TV.
We've said that about ourselves, faces for radio.
Exactly.
Well, Steve, can you promise you'll come back and talk to us another time?
Always. Did I tell you? I don't know if I told you this. My daughter went on a road trip across America. I don't know what happened to her. I'm a little bit disappointed. She's into country and Western music. I don't know what happened there. It all went wrong somewhere. But she was on a road trip across America. So she and her friend listened to every podcast I'd been on, and they liked the one with us the best.
God,
new quote for the website. Soon we're gonna have quotes from your entire family on our website.
Steve, you know, we adore you so much. We really do. We have so much love and respect for you, Steve, and you really are just such a good egg and such a good sport. And you know, we were beyond shocked and flattered the first time you came on, and second time I thought, you know, you taught us the definition of what murder is, but the definition of crazy is doing the same thing again and expecting a different result.
So and yet here you are.
I
enjoy it. It's just like having a chat with some friends, isn't it? It's nice.
Yeah, I know. I took that from that too. I know. Yeah, it's recorded. I'm gonna make that into a soundbite and put it everywhere.
That'll be my nighttime mantra. Steve said I'm his friend.
and also, Rhonda, you've been so helpful for me with stuff around Instagram, and
she's the best social media manager in the world.
I went onto Instagram. I wasn't on Instagram before I retired from the police. I went on it, and I just thought, what'd you do here? What? It just baffled me.
But your LinkedIn game is strong, and your Instagram game is it's doing good.
I'm much more comfortable on LinkedIn. Yeah, Instagram.
You gotta give people what they want, Steve. They want to see Steve Keogh, and you're giving them Steve Keogh. Those reels are doing great.
I do have to up my Instagram game though, so I will have to keep picking your brains.
Well, it's my favorite topic of conversation. The rest of the family's banned me talking about social media, so I'm always happy to have an outlet. Dee's been ignoring my calls for a week because she knows I want to talk to her about LinkedIn. This is the first time I speak
I
to
just
her
can't.
this week. Because I call her first thing in the morning after I've dropped the kids off because I want to talk to her about LinkedIn. I want to get Dee on LinkedIn, you know? So she's been ignoring. This is the first time I've spoken to her in a week. She's not taking my calls.
Yeah, basically, but I just can't. But this is why I have an amazing sister who does all of this stuff for me.
I feel bad, Steve, because you might ask a simple yes or no answer question, and then you bombard me with like 20 voice notes. So I'm sorry, Steve. I don't know.
No, you've been so helpful. Honestly, I really appreciate it. I really do.
The pleasure and the privilege is mine, as Morrissey would say.
Thank you.
But it really
is. And honestly, Rhonda, I really appreciate your help.
Oh,
Well, we are gonna call it a day now so that everyone can go on and do their lives and whatnot. But Steve, it's been absolutely amazing having you back on, and can't wait to go and have a drink at CrimeCon London with you.
Oh yeah, looking forward to it.
Yes, I secured it, Rhonda. And
we always go to it's changed venue, isn't it?
It's
the old venue used to
venue.
have a little pub opposite, and we always used to go there. I'm sure there'll be something equivalent.
I'm
at the
sure
new
we'll
one.
find a place
we will know
where
your
we
movements.
can drink. Yeah.
We'll be stalking you. We'll know where you are before you know where you are.
Yeah. We're the real detectives here. Yeah.
You watch
all
Baby
right.
Reindeer. We know how to do it.
Yeah, the how-to instructional video Baby Reindeer. We're now up to date on that. All right. Well, we will say goodbye and see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Love you. Bye, sexy listeners.
Hey there. Thanks for being a loyal listener.
Do you need a new website or want to boost your social media performance? Or do you hate podcast editing? You've tried optimizing your website and social media channels, but you're still not getting the listeners, downloads, and engagement you want?
We, the Switchblade Sisters, love helping people with tasks that they hate. We know a thing or two about podcasts, websites, and social media, and we love working with other podcasters and business owners.
So why not head over to switchbladesisterssocialclub.com and go to our Work With Us section. We believe in collaboration over competition. A rising tide raises all ships.
Bye!